You guys know how much I love the Jurassic franchise. Even the bad films of the franchise are still somewhat enjoyable, like Fallen Kingdom, like Jurassic Park 3, like Dominion, even Rebirth. And I don't know what the deal is with Rebirth being hated on, because I love the film. I honestly think everyone's just hating on it just because there's no dinosaur fight at the end. But if you guys know me at all, you'll know that I also really love Jaws. It's one of the scariest movies that I've ever seen growing up. The first time I saw it was literally the worst scene to be introduced into the movie. One time when I was about 7 or so years old, my dad was scrolling through the channels and he went, "Oh, Jaws is on." And I'm like, "Oh, can we watch that, Dad?" And he's like, "Yeah, okay, fine." And literally the first scene that I'm introduced to into the movie is when the kid gets eaten by the shark, which was traumatizing for a 7-year-old to watch. But since then, it's become one of my favorite movies because it's not just the movie that I enjoy, it's also the dedication that went into making the movie. It damn near broke Steven Spielberg financially and mentally because nothing was working. Nothing at all. Everything broke, everything sunk, nothing worked, but it was basically a destructive success because it pretty much saved Hollywood at that time. It may have broken Steven Spielberg, but it didn't break me. It got me invested. So, when I was about 13 years old, me and my friends, we went down to the mall, and we went to, like, this part of the mall where they had, like, a movie store or whatever, and they had all of the Jaws films lined up on the shelf. And I was like, screw it, I'm gonna buy those. Except for one. I did not buy 4. I couldn't remember why I hated Jaws 4, but now I remember why. So, after I saw the 50th anniversary of Jaws, I then decided to just do another movie marathon and just watch all the Jaws films, got through 2 and 3, and the last one, Jaws 4, The Revenge. Which already, that is a stupid name because literally 2 things. Sharks don't have the brain power to be able to have grudges against people, and it's also something that the marine biologist says in Jaws 2, that sharks don't feel that way or something like that.
Sharks don't take things personally, Mr. Brody.
So let's just talk about it because this isn't exactly like a movie anyone's going to be caring about. No one's going to be watching Jaws 4 for the plot. Anything that this movie talks about just makes no sense. None of the lines feel right. The acting feels so bland. Like, even some of the original actors from the first movie, they're in this. Like, Lorraine Gary, she played Ellen Brody in Jaws 1, 2, and 4. Even some of her lines just didn't sound right. It's disgusting. The acting is just bad. And you know the one thing that this movie fails to do, unlike the rest of the movies? Not once does it try to make the shark the main character. The shark is basically like a side hustle at this point. About 80% of this movie doesn't have the shark in it. It doesn't have carnage in it. You only get like 2 deaths and that's it. Like, at least with Jaws 1, 2, and 3, you actually did have deaths that actually scared you, but not in this one. So, let me start talking about it. The movie starts off with Sean Brody, who is the younger of the 2 brothers, grown up, and he's living with his mom on Amity Island. If you know what that is, then you'll know that that's where all the other movies have taken place, basically, except for the 3rd one. So, he's now a deputy of the Amity Police Department because he's following his father's footsteps. That is made very clear from the 2nd film, where he, is more like his dad than Michael is. So Sean is tasked with having to clear this buoy out on the water, out in the harbor, because it got caught on a log, or a log drifted into the buoy's path. Because it's Christmas time, there are a bunch of carolers, people who sing, going around spreading the Christmas cheer to the townsfolk. So Sean is tasked with having to clear out this buoy that got stuck on a log, and he needs that to be cleared because the Coast Guard needed to go through there or something like that. They mentioned the Coast Guard. I forgot the details to that, but basically he's tasked with having to, move this buoy off the log or the log off the buoy. Unfortunately, however, he gets attacked and his arm is ripped off by a giant great white shark. Now, there is a part to his death that I actually did like, that does make sense, and it's the carolers. It's so cold, and he's so far away, and they are so loud that they are unable to hear Sean screaming for his life as he's dragged down to the bottom of the water. But this is where I have to kind of pause for a second here and just say how stupid He was, basically, because he could have, yes, his arm got ripped off, bitten off, but at the very least, he could have just gotten up and grabbed the steering wheel and then drove the boat back to shore. Like, I'm sure that was still a possibility to happen. I mean, I'm sure he was in shock, and I'm sure that in that moment, your brain's thinking other things, but I feel like the thing that you'd want to do is, like, the gut reaction is to get out of the water. Like, it just didn't make any sense. But anyway, the shark comes back, and it actually finishes him off. It, like, drags him down to the water, and he's dead, which is really unfortunate. After that, the next morning, Ellen's very sad about it. She's, depressed now, because she just lost, like, one of her own sons. Everyone's depressed, everyone's sad. Michael comes to town with his family from the Bahamas. He has his wife and his daughter. And at some point, Michael offers her to come down to the Bahamas with them because, what's the point in staying up there if, there's no one else to be there with Ellen? Because Martin's gone, he had a heart attack, and Sean's dead. He got eaten. So, she goes down with Michael to the family and to another character we were introduced to named Hoagie, who was played by Michael Caine. One of the, I guess, better characters in this movie because he actually tries to talk some common sense into Ellen. The same thing with Michael, but I gotta be honest, there's some times where they're, like, exchanging roles. Like, at some points, Ellen's the one trying to talk common sense into Michael, and then Michael's the one trying to talk common sense into Ellen. And it just didn't really work. And I know that there is an actual fear of, like, believing that something purposely happened. Like, it came after their father, and now it's come after Sean. But those were two completely different sharks, and I get it that is a real fear. That did make sense, but anyway. She's super pissed off, and she wants Michael to get out of the water, because the job that Michael is doing and studying is, something involving snails. I forgot exactly what it was, but he's working around snails. So she's pissed off at him because, she's like, that's her only son left. And so he's reinforcing, credibility to what he's doing by saying, it's completely safe. Great white sharks don't dwell down there. They don't come down there. So it's completely safe. It's an entirely different environment. It's tropical down there. So it's safe. One thing that they try to make very clear in this movie is that great white sharks don't travel down to the Bahamas. It's warmer water. They don't like that. So I looked it up. Apparently great white sharks do go down to the Bahamas. It is rare, but it does happen. But they make it so that it's like they just don't ever, period. Like that is just a place they just do not go. But they do go down there. So it does, to an extent, make sense. But anyway, I'm going to just flash forward through some scenes here because literally about 30% of this movie isn't talking about sharks or anything related to the water. It's talking about sex and, like, sex life for the characters. Like, it's stupid, man. It's so dumb. Even the lines that they're talking about the subject, it comes off as utter cringe. It's so dumb. So some scenes go by and we're introduced to another character named Jake. Jake is one of Michael's friends who's also studying snails. So one diving trip Jake is going on. He's, collecting snails or whatever. But then the great white appears and it just hovers right past Jake. And then Jake's like, "Oh, we got a big fish down here, man." And then Michael's like, "Oh yeah, what?" And then the thing just breaches right in front of him, almost grabbing Michael. But that just makes no sense. Because the whole point to this movie is that the shark is only going after the Brodies. Anyone who is a Brody, it tries to kill. I mean, it's stupid, man. Like, the logic in this movie makes no sense. And another thing I would like to mention, the Bahamas are south, right? Whereas Amity Island is pretty much in the northeastern Atlantic. How in the world would a shark know exactly where they're going? They're in the Bahamas. They just came up from Amity Island, which is like, near the 13 colonies. It makes no sense. The shark doesn't go for Jake. It goes for Michael because it somehow knows that he's related to Sean, that he's somehow related to Martin Brody to Ellen Brody. It makes no sense, but Michael, he is left traumatized with this thing. And then what Jake tries to do is he tries to open the notion that they should study this animal because this never happens in the Bahamas. And then Michael's like, do me a favor, don't tell my mother about this, will you? Which is so dumb because I should explain too. As this was happening, Ellen, who is walking with Hoagie, and he is trying to talk some common sense into her, saying how, shark attacks are random, they just don't happen on purpose. And then as this is happening, as the shark is attacking Michael, Ellen sees this happening. Like, she's on like this boardwalk where this party is or whatever. She sees the shark attacking Michael. And then you would think that the first thing you would do would be to let your family members know what you saw. Like, yeah, don't tell the community, but like, you would at least want to tell, your mother about this. Or at the very least, you'd want to tell your wife about it. And I'll get to that in a minute. But she is seeing this same event happen, unraveling. There is a great white. She sees it. Michael sees it. And not once, do either of them talk about it. Like, they don't even throw in a possibility for them talking about it. There's nothing. It's stupid. So, after this, I'm going to skim through some scenes here. They managed to track the shark, like, I think it's like the next day or something. So now it's being tracked. They can monitor its heartbeat. It's also a GPS tracker, so they can track him in like 3-mile radius or whatever. So that's cool, I have no problem with. Earlier on in the movie, Carla, who is Michael's wife, and she tries to make this really, frankly, ugly looking piece of equipment for this beach that she's been commissioned by the government. So the government basically commissioned her to make this art piece to decorate the beach so that, she can just... Anyway, she makes this ugly piece of metal. It looks like a giant pair of scissors, to my knowledge. Like, it literally, if you look at a pair of scissors, just look at that. That's basically kind of like what this thing looks like. Or like, a half-cut paper plate. Anyway, she doesn't stress enough to Michael that this is a really big thing for her, that, this is like the biggest moment in her career. She's about to unveil this, piece of art that she's been working on for years. So it's a big deal to her. So you would think that her husband would be there to support his wife and unveil this piece of art that she's been so excited on unveiling. Wrong. What he ends up doing is go fucking diving and goes into, snail exploration mode or something like that. As he's doing that, Carla and Michael's daughter, Thea, goes out onto the water because, she's bored, she wants to have fun. So she goes out onto the water on this banana boat looking thing. Carla's like, yeah, go play, because, it's for adults, really. So Thea goes out on the water, and then the shark attacks Thea. She doesn't die. Spoiler. Not that you're going to care about that. Ellen's watching this. Carla's watching this. Carla's friend, who's also Jake's wife, is watching this. And then the shark barely misses Thea and ends up dragging this mother that was on the same boat down and killing her and all that. So as this is happening, Ellen is so pissed off that she decides to go after the shark. Why? I don't know. It's not like she can do anything. I don't know what the thought process was with this, because when she finally catches up to the shark, or like when the shark finally catches up to her, she basically tries to like offer herself to the shark. Like, it's stupid, man. It makes no sense. But anyway, so Michael gets home seeing his wife and his daughter traumatized, and he's like, well, what happened? And first of all, Carla's like, where were you? Which is an appropriate thing to say, considering that a shark just attacked their daughter. So he's like, that's not important. Well, what happened? And then she's like, well, our daughter was just attacked by a shark. And then Michael's like, oh, I'm sorry. I should have known. I'm so sorry. And then Carla's like, what do you mean you should have known? And that's when the penny drops. Michael explains that they've been trying to track the shark, trying to study it. And then Carla is just like, you knew about this thing and you didn't tell us? So, I'd like to pause for a second here This scene is so stupid and it makes no sense because I think the first thing you'd want to do if you saw a shark, a great white shark, an absolute unit of a monster, you'd want to tell your wife about it. You would just want to do that. It makes no sense why they didn't at least try to talk about it. It just makes no sense to why Michael didn't say anything, why Ellen didn't say anything. Like, there was so much lack of communication in this movie, and there was so much lack of trying to do anything with this movie. It is so bad. It's so awful. Jaws 4: The Revenge is so disgusting to watch. It hurts so bad to watch. Anyway, Carla's pissed off with Michael. Michael, then just randomly starts saying, "Where's my mother? Where's my mother? Where's my mother?" He's just like, "Where's my mother? That's not important right now. Where's my mother?" Even though he just saw that his daughter is traumatized and in shock because of this near-death experience with a shark. And then he just bolts out of the room, and then you hear Carla just scream, "Why didn't you tell us?" Eventually, Michael gets Jake, and the two of them get Hoagie because Hoagie's a pilot. He's able to fly over the ocean and catch up to the boat where they see that the shark is about to attack Ellen. So Hoagie does a rather realistically brave thing, which is land the plane on the water. So this scene was probably one of my, I guess you would say, favorite scenes, because it actually does make a little bit of sense. And it was kind of cool to watch a plane land on the water. They land the plane on the water, and then the shark is attracted to the electromagnetic frequency or whatever from the plane. Oh, I got a fart. Hold on. Oh, excuse me. Jake and Michael get out of the plane. The shark attacks Hoagie. Hoagie survives, by the way. But the shark brings the plane down into the ocean. They all get on the boat, and then this is one of the... This scene coming up that I'm about to explain to you guys, it could have had potential, but they ruined it so impressively. So Jake and Michael start rigging up these weird-looking flashlight-looking things. They do explain that basically, they have a purpose. If you have one close, if you have one in the shark, it'll send off like a shock to the shark, and it'll just make it go crazy. So what they end up doing, they basically rig these two flashlights up that basically, if one of the flashlights is in the mouth of the shark, it'll drive it crazy, and, the one outside the shark can send, electromagnetic pulses into the shark, which will drive it crazy or something like that. I don't know how that's supposed to work. I don't know if that's a real thing, but anyway. The idea sounds kind of cool, but what happens next, I kid you not, I can't believe they actually put this in. The shark is coming after them, and Jake is on the end of the bow, on the end of this pole-looking thing. He's on the end of this pole, holding the flashlight in his hand, and the shark lunges out of the water, about to grab him, and then Jake, puts the flashlight in its mouth, and I swear to God, it's like he offered himself as a snack to the shark, because they don't show him slipping, they don't show him losing his grip, he just flings himself back into the mouth, like one of those classic, fling yourself on your back on your bed. It's like that, man. He does that to the shark, and then the shark just drags him down to the water, and yeah, that sucked. So now Michael's super pissed off because it just ate his best friend. It just killed his brother. It tried to kill his daughter and his mother. So Michael's pissed off, rightfully so. They find the shark, no problem. So Michael grabs the other flashlight, and it actually does make a cool sound when he charges it up. It actually does sound kind of cool. But he sends an EMP charge from his flashlight into the shark, and then the shark starts roaring. I'm gonna just kind of slow myself down for a second here, because I would just love to explain to everyone. I was about to crash out when I was making this video, but I would just love to explain to those of you who don't know a lot about sharks. Sharks have been around for at least 1 billion years, and the one thing they don't have since the dawn of time is vocal cords. Sharks cannot make noises. They just cannot. They don't make growly noises. They don't make hissing noises. Fucking spiders make hissing noises. And I don't even think they have vocal cords, I don't think. But the one thing that sharks cannot do is roar. Like, that is, I think, the stupidest thing about it. But actually, no, it's not. Because the next thing that happens is Ellen, who is driving the boat, she rams the broken end of the pole on the bow into the shark. And for whatever reason, throughout this movie, she keeps on having flashbacks to, like, wherever Martin was in the movie. So in the first movie, when Martin, shoots the shark and it blows up, that makes sense because, there's like an air tank in there. But I kid you not, Ellen rams the broken end of the pole into the shark, and then it explodes. Brain dead idea. Like, it's so bad. The shark explodes. It explodes just by getting impaled. And to make it even worse, to add salt in the wounds, it uses about 70% of its death scenes from the first movie. Like, in the first movie, when you see the shark die, those are its death scenes. And to make it even worse, this wasn't even the original cut of its death. I remember watching a video some years back of when the pole was driven into the shark. It didn't explode. It just, like, started bleeding out. That was fine. That made sense. And also, another thing that happened in this death scene, for reasons unknown, the boat blows up. I don't know why, because they weren't using explosives. The shark explodes, and that brings the boat down? Like, it makes no sense. It's so impressive how stupid this movie is. Like, everyone's talking about the new War of the Worlds movie with Ice Cube and how stupid that movie is. You need to watch this movie and see how inconsistent is the word I want to use. It's so lackluster and inconsistent with what it's trying to do. Like, this movie tries to take itself seriously so many times, but it fails at everything it does. It doesn't tell a good story. It doesn't follow any real life, like, logistics. It makes no sense. This movie is bad. It is so bad. And you know what also doesn't make sense? Jake is alive. He didn't get eaten, or at least he didn't die. Because literally we see Jake getting dragged down by the shark, like, in its mouth. So you're expecting that it ate him, but it didn't. Or at least, like, it's so wrong. Everything is wrong in this movie. They all have, like, this happy moment. Jake's alive, Michael Caine's alive, Ellen's alive, Michael's alive. So they're all happy, I guess. And then it then cuts to them at the airport, and then that's like, they're saying farewell and everything, and there's this big, like, come next summer to Amity Island or whatever, and then the plane takes off. And that's that. Yeah. That's Jaws 4. It's easily what I think I'm comfortable saying in terms of the movies I've watched. It's quite possibly the worst movie I've ever seen. Like, I'm not even gonna count, like, Unicron's Revenge as a movie, because that was just a fan film with a crisis. But this movie, it's 40 years old, and it looks so bad. It looks bad even for a film of the 80s. Like, I think there's even worse films that came after it, but in terms of, like, all-time worst movies I've ever seen, I think this comes up to being the second or first. If there's ever a Jaws reboot, I pray to God that it's a lot better than the crap we were given 40 years prior. That's it. Thank you for watching.